the four corners of this land we call America the Beautiful, here is a fascinating look at the world around us. RV trips of adventure, discovery, and beauty to find some of the most beautiful and unique places, people, and events on American Odyssey. Join us now as we leave the freeways behind and head for the back roads of America to discover what's just beyond the next bend in the road. Well, what can I call this Odyssey? We're going to the Great Smoky Mountains by way of Nashville, Chattanooga, and Ducktown. Yep, Ducktown. Along the way, I'll try to show you what I saw and experienced, and maybe I can touch your heart with some of the feelings I felt along the way. Let's try it together, and we'll call it A Time for Tennessee, or something like that. Well, are we ready for an RV trip through Tennessee? I am. Let's go pick up my motorhome.
Well, Bob, if I practice my southern accent a little bit, you suppose I could ever become a Tennessean?
Oh, I think if you keep working on it, I believe you finally make it.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir. Y'all come back now. You hear?
See you later.
Okay.
Well, after receiving the keys, Bob assured me that the language barrier would be no problem the more I worked on my southern accent. It was Cullum and Maxie, one of the friendliest RV dealers in Nashville, that loaned me one of their motorhomes to explore the back roads on the way to the Great Smoky Mountains by way of Chattanooga and Ducktown. Yep, Ducktown. Now, this part of the country is new to me, so before heading out on the back roads, I looked over the modern city of Nashville with its many ties to the past. And the musical part of the past is the Grand Ole Opry, where you'll find grand masters of country music like Garth Brooks.
This old highway's getting longer. It seems there ain't no end in sight. To sleep would be best, but I just can't afford to rest. I got a ride in Denver tomorrow night.
Or perhaps an old favorite like Porter Wagoner.
High on the mountain, what do you see? Bear tracks, looking back at me. Well, you better get your rifle, boy, before it's too late.
Or perhaps pretty Patty Loveless at the Grand Ole Opry that's still going strong after all these years. The stern-wheeler, General Jackson, in all its glory, still plies the rivers of Tennessee. On the way out of Nashville, I took notice of the roadside geology that I find quite fascinating. Well, before long, I found myself in Murfreesboro, where the flavor of the Old South still lingers. And true Southern hospitality is still alive and well. The original name of Murfreesboro, in case you didn't know, was Cannonsburg. And there is a reconstruction of old Cannonsburg on the north side of Murfreesboro that'll take you back in time to the days when the early settlers came here over the Appalachian Mountains to settle this country before the Civil War. It wasn't an easy life in those days, but it seemed to me that the people were fairly comfortable. Jack Chamberlain, who told me some of the interesting tales of early life here, is one of the volunteer guides at Cannonsburg. Inside one of the early log homes, other volunteers invited me to browse to my heart's content among the shadows of the Tennessee early years. You know, it seems that everywhere I go in the South, I come face to face with yet another reminder of this country's bloody struggle for unity. Here, where the Battle of Stones River was fought, is yet another cemetery with row upon row of headstones with names that could come right out of today's phone book. Names like Windsor, Donovan, Wade, and even Kissinger. Those who couldn't be identified were only numbers. Here is yet another place of eternal rest for the sons of the mothers who cried the same salty tears, whether they were in Pennsylvania or Tennessee, Vermont or Georgia. It really didn't matter where they lived. Here lie the boys, some even too young to shave, many who had no idea what they were dying for. Forgotten for the most part, except by those of us who come here out of curiosity or a sense of history or maybe a few of the succeeding generations of the brothers or sisters that survived. I stood here and read their names aloud, as if, just possibly, they might hear me, to let them know that I know and I do care. Traveling down Highway 70 through small layers of small towns, I paused long enough to grab a picture of an old abandoned farmhouse that I felt had something to say to those who would take the time to stop and listen. I let a couple of old hound dogs in the background read me the riot act. A sign on the road directed me to Foster Falls. Well, I should have known. In the autumn season, you won't find water rushing over the falls like you would in the spring. The leaves are beginning to reveal their true colors, and to me they say, sorry about the shortage of water at this time of year, but, well, as long as you're here, take in the beautiful fall colors. Somewhere south of Altamont, I stopped to watch a man catch a fish. When you're busy fishing, everything in the world becomes unimportant, and you are one with the world around you. It doesn't matter that you didn't get that fish. What really matters is that you are here now to do it. Life is too short to waste all of it on work. Well, when I crossed the Tennessee River Bridge, I knew I was close to Chattanooga. If you come this way, through Chattanooga that is, try to do it in the summer because that's when things are happening. Chattanooga is a happy place, and you could and should spend at least a week here when you come to visit. Now, as early as 1540, Hernando de Soto and his party passed this way. Later, the English began to settle along the Tennessee River as they came through the Cumberland Gap. The city was first called Ross's Landing. The people thought the name was not in keeping with the promise of their community. Someone suggested Chattanooga because of its musical sound and its unique quality and its historic connection with the Indians who lived here, and it was chosen. Well, Chattanooga certainly is a city worthy of a closer look, but then we'd never make it to the Smoky Mountains, would we? When you visit Chattanooga, plan to take a riverboat ride. Ride the incline to Lookout Mountain and spend some time exploring its history and its beauty. East out of Cleveland, I ran into my first visit to a TVA dam that forms Lake Ocoee. Remember the Tennessee Valley Authority of the 30s when the U.S. government went on a dam building rampage all over America? Well, I was still in knee pants, but I remember reading about the hardships it placed upon people that had to be moved because of the flooding caused by the many dams that were built. Today, the many lakes that were created offer many water sports activities. As I continued upstream along the Ocoee River, I noticed a lot of cars parked along the riverbank. I got the clue that something was going on that required closer examination. Well, this is part of the fun of backroading, I suppose. You never know what you may find along the way. Well, good grief, what have we here? Driving east on Highway 74 along the Ocoee River, I came upon a whitewater contest with some river rafters thrown in. No pun intended. Here is a sport I know very little about, and I have about the same amount of enthusiasm to try. Well, this looks to me like a good way of getting wet and cold without ever leaving your boat. The Ocoee River, that's the one we're looking at, is rated among the top whitewater recreational rivers in the nation. Well, after hanging around for a while, I found out by reading the banner that this is the World Whitewater Rodeo Championship. The river is shared by eager rafters waiting until the canoe action subsides a little, and then they come crashing through with gusto. It's kind of like a rodeo in that it's the best ride that gets the highest points. I'm not sure who gets the wettest, the rafters or the canoers. Any way you look at it, looks like it could be fun if you don't mind getting wet.
I thought it was the most fun I ever had.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's it.
Jesus, Rev coming through! Beep, beep, beep.
Tell me what you thought of it.
It was fantastic. It was great. I'll do it again.
Would you do it again?
As soon as it gets warmer weather.
Did you get wet?
No.
Well, we are slowly making our way to the Smoky Mountains, but I couldn't help but notice the lush green growth along the roadside. Just up the road a ways is a town called Ducktown. Well, that's nothing. A little further down the road is another one called Turtletown. Well, with a name like Ducktown, I'm not too surprised to see a law office. Wouldn't it be interesting to research the origin of some of these strange names of some American cities and towns? But I'll leave that for another time when we have more time to spend in one location. I love to see the American flag waving in small-town America. It gives me a feeling of pride. Well, since it was Sunday morning and I'd never been to a Baptist church before, I stopped in to say howdy and pay my respects to the man in charge of everything. If you're traveling through Tennessee, make sure you see this part of it because it's beautiful. Soft, delicate beauty like I've never seen before. Fort Loudon is about halfway between Madisonville and Maryville on US 411. This fort dates back to about 1756, a time when this was the Cherokee Nation. Originally, the Cherokee were allies of the British in the territorial struggle with the French. However, the Cherokee turned against the settlers and starved them out of the fort when the trade and treaty goods were found to be inferior. And what does that mean?
We are Cherokee from Tuskegee. The village of Tuskegee set right here outside the fort.
Loudon was the most westerly penetration of the British during that period of American history. Now, however, we see them coming through as tourists in rented cars and RVs. In fall, you're liable to see beautiful seasonal displays along the roadside on the way to Cades Cove. America's most popular national park is not the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, or Yosemite, as one might imagine. That honor goes to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park here in eastern Tennessee. Every year, more than 8 million visitors come here from everywhere. Very little is known about Chief Cade, spelled with a K, the Cherokee Indian after whom the cove was named. One of the earliest settlers in Cades Cove were John and Lucretia Oliver, who came here in 1818. This is the Oliver family's log cabin house. Further on down the road is the old Methodist church and the graveyard, where so many memories of Cades Cove families lie buried. The narrow road through Cades Cove twists and turns with numerous turnouts for quiet contemplation and beautiful pastoral scenes. The scenery changes with the seasons, but the memories of the early settlers will remain forever. Maybe as you pass through, you can feel the presence of those early settlers. I did. Leaving Cades Cove along the Elkmont Road, I marveled at the rich colors and the pristine wilderness here in the Smoky Mountain foothills. It seems to bring out the serious as well as the amateur photographers. I don't think you could take a bad picture here if you tried. Following US 441 up into the mountains, I soon found myself on top of Old Smoky, or more properly referred to as Newfound Gap. Here you can get a good look at the top of the Smokies. And if you're like me, you'll try to make new friends with fellow RVers wherever you go.
Now, Jack, you got to tell me, Do I have to change my Tennessee accent to a North Carolina accent now?
Oh, no, we're very friendly.
Are you?
Yes,
oh,
sir.
Okay. Well,
We accept most anyone.
Even me?
Yes, we do.
Well, folks, here we are on the border between North Carolina and Tennessee, and my friends Jack and his family here are joining
My
me.
wife, Nancy.
Hi,
Grandson,
Nancy.
Eric.
How are you? Hi, Eric.
Son-in-law, Bobby.
Hi, Bobby.
How you doing, sir?
And
Grandson, Joshua.
how you doing, Josh?
Daughter, Deborah.
Glad to know you.
No matter where I go, I meet the friendliest people on the back roads of America.
Hello, America.
Coming back down out of the mountains, I entered Gatlinburg, also known as the gateway to the Smokies. Take the skylift to the top of Crockett Mountain for an awesome view of the Smokies and Gatlinburg. I don't know about you, but I've learned to love beauty. You know, it took me a long time to realize that every day is precious. That happiness is somewhere between too little and too much. That laughter is a tranquilizer with no after effects. And that God is like a mirror. The mirror never changes, but everyone who looks into it sees something different. Thank you for your company on this Smoky Mountain Odyssey. I'm Rudy Schroeder. My pleasure comes from showing you the back roads and scenic byways of this great United States of America. The beauty, adventure, and the friends that I make along the way, I love to share with you in the hopes that you too have enjoyed this American Odyssey.